The doors would not open, and the Queen was already furious. I stood at my post outside the convergence hall with my back straight and my hands steady, though my heart was pounding harder than it had in years. 6 hours of standing guard, and now the most powerful ruler in this sector of space was looking at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. "Move," said Queen Vashtoreth. Her voice came through 3 translator channels at once, and even the gentlest version of it sounded like a blade. "This entrance is reserved for delegates. You are human. Lesser species do not guard doors at a gathering of elders." I did not move. That was the job I had been given, and I intended to do it. "Ma'am, this post was assigned to me by the Convocation Security Council," I said. "If you have a complaint, you are welcome to raise it with them. I will still be standing here when you return." Behind her, members of her royal guard let out sharp hisses of disapproval. In my earpiece, my supervisor Dahl whispered a warning, begging me not to cause trouble on a day when so many important guests had gathered. I was not trying to cause trouble. I was trying to hold my position, nothing more. The Queen's eyes, 4 of them, narrowed further. "You believe your species matters here simply because you were allowed inside this building? Humanity is barely 30 years removed from discovering how to travel faster than light. You are nothing but a rounding error with 2 working hands. Step aside." I will admit, my palms were sweating inside my gloves. Every instinct told me that royalty does not get told no, especially not by someone like me, a former officer from a small town who had joined the guard because the pay was good and his sister needed medical care. But I had studied the rules of this place. I had read them more than once, long before this assignment ever became real to me. The ground around the convergence hall was neutral. Whoever stood guard at its doors answered only to the convocation itself, not to any crown, not to any bloodline, not to any threat. "Your Majesty," I said carefully, "there is no category in the charter for lesser species. There is only recognized and unrecognized. Humanity has been recognized. I am simply following Article 4. You dare correct me?" Her voice rose, sharp enough that several guests passing nearby paused to watch. "I am not correcting you," I answered. "I am only repeating what is written." For a moment, something changed behind her eyes. It was not anger this time. It looked more like confusion, as if she had expected me to break, and instead found a wall she had not measured properly. That is when the great doors behind me finally opened. I had not called for help. I want to make that clear, because many people later assumed I had planned this moment, that I had somehow arranged the timing. I had not. I was simply a man holding his post, because it was the post he had been given. Ambassador Kellen Vire stepped out first, an elderly diplomat known across many worlds for his patience and his fairness. Behind him came dozens of elders from more than 40 planets, all of them leaving a session that had run far longer than expected, a session about something I did not yet understand. Ambassador Vire looked first at the Queen, then at me. Slowly, deliberately, he inclined his head toward me before speaking to anyone else. "Officer Nolan," he said, "my apologies for the delay. The session ran longer than planned. I trust the post held steady." "It held, sir," I answered. "Good." He turned to face the Queen, and his tone shifted, becoming colder and more formal. "Vashtoreth, I heard part of your exchange through the chamber speakers. Perhaps you would like to repeat your opinion about Article 4 in front of the full convocation, since you seem to have strong feelings about who deserves its protection." The Queen's mandibles stopped moving entirely. Because here is what none of us guarding that door had known. The session had not run long because of trade discussions or border disputes. It had run long because of a vote, one that had been building for nearly 4 years. Humanity's request for full recognition within the convocation had just been approved. 41 worlds had taken part in the vote, and the majority had said yes. We were no longer considered new. We were no longer considered small. We had not been, technically, for the past several minutes, but none of us standing outside had known it. because we had been doing our jobs instead of watching the outcome unfold. One by one, the elders behind Ambassador Vire, beings whose civilizations had existed long before humans had learned to build simple tools, straightened their posture, and then, together, they saluted. Not because I had done anything extraordinary, not because I had won some clever argument against a queen many times my size and strength. It was because I had held a door. Because when an ancient and complicated system needed someone to follow its rules exactly, without exception and without hesitation, there had been a human standing there who did precisely that. Queen Vashtoreth remained still for a long moment. Then, stiffly, as though the motion cost her something important, she lowered her head toward me as well. It was not an apology. Her people rarely gave those, but it was an acknowledgement, and for someone of her rank, that was close enough. "Lesser," she said quietly, almost to herself, as if testing the word and finding it did not taste the way it used to. "Officer is fine, ma'am," I offered gently. She did not respond to that. She walked past me into the hall, her guards following close behind, and she did not look back again. Dole's voice returned through my earpiece, softer this time. "Nolan, are you all right?" "Yes," I said, and I realized I meant it completely. Just doing my job. Behind me, representatives from more than 40 worlds were still watching the door, waiting to see what I would do next. I kept my eyes forward and continued holding my post. What none of them knew was how close I had come to stepping aside. Not out of fear, though there was plenty of that, but out of doubt. Doubt that the rules I had memorized would actually matter if a queen decided otherwise. Doubt that a single person, especially someone as ordinary as me, could hold a line against someone with that much power. But rules only work if someone is willing to stand behind them, even when standing there feels impossible. Later that evening, after the crowds had thinned and the halls had grown quiet, Ambassador Vire found me still at my post, waiting for the next shift to begin. "You could have stepped aside," he said, studying me carefully. "Many would have." "I thought about it," I admitted, "for about half a second." He smiled, the kind of smile that comes from someone who has seen many centuries of similar moments. That half second is the difference between a species that follows rules and one that simply hopes to survive by avoiding conflict. "Today, you showed everyone which kind humanity intends to be." "I was just standing at a door, sir." "Sometimes," he said, "that is exactly what history requires." He left after that, and I stood there thinking about how strange the whole day had been. I had expected, when I signed up for guard duty on a station full of species older and stronger than my own, that my job would mostly involve staying quiet and staying out of the way. I had not expected to become part of a moment that people would talk about for years. News of the encounter spread quickly across the station and beyond it. Within hours, reports reached other human outposts, other ships, other colonies scattered across nearby systems. Officers I had never met sent messages of congratulations. Some called it a turning point. Others simply said it was proof that humanity had earned its place, not through force, but through steady, quiet determination. I did not think of myself as anyone special. I still do not. I had simply refused to abandon a responsibility I had been given, even when someone far more powerful demanded that I do exactly that. Grace, my sister, called me later that night through a delayed transmission, her voice crackling slightly across the distance between our worlds. "I heard what happened," she said. "Are you famous now?" "I don't think so," I told her. "I just did my job." "Well," she said, laughing, "your job sounds a lot more interesting than mine." We talked for a while longer, about nothing important, about home, about how she was recovering well, and how grateful she was for the treatment my work had made possible. It reminded me why I had taken this assignment in the first place, long before queens and ambassadors and votes about recognition had entered my life. By the time the conversation ended, the station had grown quiet again, the corridors mostly empty except for a few guards finishing their shifts. I stood there a while longer, watching the stars drift past the reinforced windows, thinking about how ordinary the day had felt right up until it suddenly was not. Humanity had been given a seat at the table, not because we had impressed anyone with our strength, but because when it mattered most, one of us had simply refused to move. I never saw Queen Vashtoreth speak to me directly again after that day, though I noticed, whenever her ship arrived at the station in the following months, that her guards nodded toward me without being asked. It was a small thing, barely noticeable to anyone else, but it told me everything I needed to know. Respect, I had learned, rarely comes from grand gestures or powerful displays. Sometimes it comes from something as simple as standing exactly where you are supposed to stand and refusing to leave, no matter who tells you otherwise.